Let me know petitioner, beneficiary in your green card process. You can say P for petitioner, meaning you're the US citizen that filed the application, or B for the beneficiary, meaning you're the non-citizen who is getting your green card. So let me know that in the comments. That would be a fun game for us. On YouTube, no sound. I think earlier, but I think we're back now. Let me know if everyone can see me on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. TikTok, I see you guys. Hello. Rose, all good. Okay, great. All right. So today's topic, we're talking about 10 ways you can prove extreme cruelty. Before the disconnections, I was talking about how October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So we're taking the time at my law firm, at the immigration law firm, to educate our clients and educate you guys who are watching us right now about different ways to identify abuse, the abuse necessary to apply for your VAWA-based green card. Okay, this information is very important for non-citizens who are currently married to a citizen and they've either applied for a green card, so you're the petitioner or beneficiary of some I-130 from your spouse, or maybe they haven't filed, because that's one of the things we see with abuse. But we'll get to that today. If that's your situation, if you hear any of these things and you can relate to it, you could most likely qualify for a VAWA self-petition. Okay, a VAWA self-petition provides the opportunity for you, the non-citizen, to still get your green card regardless of your spouse's involvement. Because if you're in an abusive relationship or you want to file for a divorce or you want to leave, many non-citizens get scared of that option because that means they may lose their kids or they may get deported because they're not going to have status, all these things, all these fears. So that's why we talk about it here, and also to also make you aware for the month, okay? So we're gonna get right into the first thing we're discussing today. I think I just explained what VAWA is, essentially. It protects both men and women. So that's the whole purpose of VAWA. Many of you, if you're already following me on social media, I'm always talking about VAWA because I do help clients file their marriage-based green card. But in that same process, I've seen a lot of abusive dynamics. So that's how I got into the VAWA aspect of things, because if your whole future is dependent on one person per se, your future in the USA, right? And that person starts to make certain comments or say, that becomes a difficult dynamic. So that's how we incorporate VAWA-based green cards into our marriage-based green cards, because you still need to be married to the abuser, right? There are certain evidences you have to show of a bona fide relationship, which I also share a lot of tips on TikTok and Instagram. So check those out to know how you need to prove a bona fide relationship. So with VAWA, bona fide relationship is still a requirement because, it's not only going to be about the abuse. You need to have, been at least for the best of your knowledge, because that's the whole deception, right? When you met the person, they were this sweet person, and then all of a sudden they change. So that's essentially what VAWA is. So this can happen with men or women. So it's not just women who get abused in relationships. I shared a story yesterday about a male victim. I mean, it ended up very fatal, but it doesn't have to be that way for you. So if you are a man and you feel like it's difficult sometimes to claim like your woman is abusive towards you, because we always ignore emotional abuse, financial abuse. We always ignore that stuff and always focus on maybe just physical. You're like, nobody's abusing me, nobody can hit me, I'm a man, you know. Yeah, be a man, but also understand that you need to protect your mental health in order to move forward in fulfilling your purpose. Because otherwise, you're just going to be stuck in that cycle of, constantly looking behind your back, checking your accounts, making sure that somebody's not, doing one thing or the other. Because there's, a whole bunch of gaslighting that goes on in an abusive dynamic. So we take those things for granted, but it's actually a big deal. And thankfully, under the VAWA program, you don't have to, prove any physical abuse. Emotional abuse is sufficient, like things like degrading comments, calling you, if it's a interracial like relationship, there's usually some derogatory comments that come when the person gets upset, and really just making you pay for everything or overspending the money and saying, I basically gave you a green card, so this money you're making is mine. Those types of comments would the USCIS would consider those types of things for a VAWA application. All right. All right. So let's move on to the next thing we're talking about. So there are different ways, right? But today we gathered about 10 ways. So that's a bunch of them. I'm going to get through some of them, and then I'll take the time to answer some of the questions. On YouTube, can you hear me? Let me know in the comments if you can still hear me. All right. So how do you know, right? I just gave you a bunch of examples and explanations about VAWA, but some people still always think that their situation may just be normal marital problems. I understand, because in a dynamic, a relationship with two people, right, there's always bound to be some type of conflict. With that, people tend to misunderstand what abuse, like where is the threshold? How do we know like this is abusive versus just being normal? Okay, so there are different ways, and today we have 10. So hang in there. We're gonna get through it. I'm gonna get through it pretty quickly so I can answer some of the questions. PJ, just let us know what your question is in the comments, and we'll just answer you once we're getting through that. Okay. So if you have a question, you don't have to, ask my permission. Just ask your question and I'll answer. All right. All right. So what's the first thing we can notice in a family dynamic where there's involved? Sometimes the abuser would use that to their advantage to try to control you, right? How would they do that? So subtle things like complaining every time the children do something, like, oh, I'm too loud, I'm trying to sleep, like every single time. They make you feel uncomfortable with having your children around, right? They just don't want your children around, period. So it's either children you had with them or children you had before you got married to the US citizen. So just children they seemingly accepted, and now every time your child is just eating, they're like, oh, it's eating all my food, eating too much. Like, oh, it's doing, is wasting this or wasting. Just complain about your child. So because they know that they can easily use your children to manipulate your emotion. That's like an easy one. So if you're a mom in a situation, or even a dad, because I'm literally dealing, I actually just forgot about that. I'm dealing with a situation right now where the child of the non-citizen is now just, basically homeless because of those types of, the US citizen pretty much said, just make your decision. Otherwise, leave my house. Like, so why would you do that to the child of your non-citizen spouse, knowing how it's going to affect that dynamic? So it happens. And it's so unfortunate if you see that type of stuff happening repeatedly, or if you are the child that's being like threatened, you also have an option to file VAWA, okay, because this is your step parent seemingly doing these things and just being manipulative and or threatening. Maybe I'm gonna call ICE and they'll take away the children from you and deport you, and I'll keep my children or something around children, right? It's always a threat related to your children, using your children to pass information and just control you. So if you're in that type of situation, definitely reach out to discuss it, because it's definitely emotional abuse that can be used for a VAWA self petition. All right. And through this process, you're able to move on to getting your 10-year green card, which is the final goal here. But if you're able to at least get through a prima facie decision, which tells you that, yes, I meet all the 7 requirements for VAWA, meaning I'm married to a U.S. citizen, the relationship was bona fide, I admit any crimes, all those things, you can potentially just get your 10-year green card without interview and just move on with your life. Okay? So that's why we need to know these things. All right? So the next one, yes, economic control and financial manipulation. That one is actually the biggest one. I believe I already gave some examples about that. We see a lot of economic, like not letting you work or not letting you spend the money when you work. I've heard several situations where the U.S. Actually still file a petition. Okay, disconnected on Facebook. I think we're back now. Yeah, I'm not certain what's going on with the connection. GG. My cat's trying to join this live. I'm not sure what's going on with the connection. We have seemingly good weather, but you PJ, you good? Oh, okay, good. Okay, can everybody hear me now? Okay, good. How about TikTok? If I leave it here, can you still hear me? Because wow. Okay. Anyway, we'll just try to get through it as quickly as possible and see if we can answer some questions and just get through it. Can you hear me? Oh yeah, you just said yes. I guess I'm not supposed to hear myself. Anyways, do you have any questions so far from anything I've been discussing about filing your green card or um, realizing or wondering if you are in an abusive dynamic or if your situation is abusive? Oh yeah, TikTok is losing connection as well. So anyway, we'll just try to make it through today. Sometimes things don't go smoothly, but that's okay. And that's exactly the whole concept about VAWA is that you plan to build a life with someone and then, it just didn't go that way. So, but it doesn't mean that you I'm checking our connections, or everything seems fine. It doesn't mean that, a bona fide marriage is not always a good marriage, right? It's just a real marriage and then things went wrong. So in life, things don't always go as we plan, but there's always a plan B. You can keep, well, the plan A is just to keep staying in the situation and potentially end up, apart from losing your physical life, just not doing anything, any of your dreams, because your entire life and time is occupied with, settling arguments or having family meetings, like family meetings about the same issue over and over again. Like, hell no. So just leave. I mean, just leave. Like, if it's about a green card, then this is the option for you, right? So anyway, if there are no questions, we'll move on to the next point. But you get the gist about economic control because, like I said, that's a big one since the whole world runs on money, basically. Yeah. So the next one is your immigration status. When your U.S. citizen spouse is constantly threatening you with divorce because they feel like when they divorce you, you're going to get deported because they're not going to be supporting your immigration anymore. Or they'll just be like, I'll call ICE to just take you back to your country. I mean, I've had someone literally call me to say, how do I get someone deported back to your country because she's no longer interested in the application. So, I mean, in that case, I didn't say much. But when I've had the opportunity to talk to some petitioners, I'm like, listen, if your non-citizen spouse is abusive, because there are times when that's the case, right? It's not only the dynamic of the U.S. citizen spouse being abusive because of, or because of the green card or whatever, or for whatever reason, right? Sometimes the non-citizen is the abuser per se, right? And that's why there's a requirement for good moral character. You have to be a person of good moral character to qualify for VAWA, right? So if you're an abuser yourself, that's going to affect your own eligibility. So, so if I tell the petitioners I speak to, I'm like, listen, if you are in an abusive dynamic and the non-citizen is actually the one being abusive, you really don't need to call an immigration lawyer to try to get the person deported. I mean, just like leave as well, right? It's the same thing. Just file a divorce. I mean, you don't need to even use that as threats because making threats on filing a divorce or canceling the immigration is manipulative because you just want the person to respond in a certain way so that you cancel the immigration, essentially. Because why are you announcing that? If you want to divorce, just divorce, right? But if you're calling a lawyer, trying to really be, I mean, I understand, the place of hurt. You might be coming from a place of, I want to get them back, but really this is not the way because it's going to be made clear because there are investigations that go on right, on the VAWA applications. So it's going to be known this person was able to prove enough extreme cruelty, and if or whether they have good moral character, and if they're not, then that would be that's a different situation. So that's nothing for you to worry about. If if you are the non-citizen, also worrying about getting your U.S. citizen spouse in trouble, because I get that call a lot as well. I don't want to get them in trouble, but they always threaten me with deportation or whatever. But if I have VAWA, it might seem as if they're like a bad person or something like that. I'm like, nobody's judging. Nobody's here to. That's not the point we're getting at here, right? We're trying to essentially find freedom to fulfill purpose. That's what you're doing. So if somebody is keeping you down and you're unable to fulfill that purpose or go towards your goals because you're spending time doing, you know, resolutions on arguments that should not be happening, then that's just the tricky at that point, right? But don't let anybody threaten to make you feel like you have to stay or do anything because of a green card. It's just not worth it. Like, it's just not worth it. You can thrive anywhere in the world, actually, but you know, generally, if you are, if you had a bona fide marriage and everything was great from the beginning, and you're able to show that timeline, you most likely have a successful VAWA green card. Okay, and it's a 10-year permanent green card, which means that your next stop is your U.S. citizenship after 5 years. Okay, all right. The next thing, what number is this now? Intimidation. Intimidation is essentially like basically making threats on your immigration status, like just constantly trying to remind you every day, like, remember, I am God. That's what they're trying to make you feel like. Remember, I'm the one that filed for you. I brought you into this country, so bow down to me. F that, right? That doesn't make any sense. Nobody should be in control of you in that way to try to take control over your life, and make you feel small. And if you continue to allow yourself to be in that position, like I said, it does stunt your entire life, and it could take years out of your life. And so you need to nip it in the bud now. Find help, seek therapy. I mean, some people sometimes wonder if they have to really divorce their spouse because they think it's something they can work on. I'm like, if it's something you think you can work on, go ahead and, seek therapy. But you're not going to waste your time not getting what you actually need to be a participant in this marriage, because without your work authorization or your travel permit, that's a difficult situation, right? You just have one person supporting the family with the finances, which is more control and everything like that, and you're not able to really just contribute in any way that's meaningful. And so then they make you feel bad for not contributing. You see, so it's just a cycle that you cannot win from. So if you want to work in marriage, fine, but you really should know that you have these options to free yourself, right? I'm pretty sure both beneficiaries and petitioners watch me on YouTube and Facebook and TikTok. So I know I'm not just speaking to immigrants. I'm speaking to U.S. citizens and the permanent residents, right? You are in this situation. Don't think that just because you're filing for someone that now gives you some type of I mean, we're just all human beings, right? Trying to make it. It doesn't give you some type of authority over them. I mean, think about when someone says, "I'm calling ICE to deport you." I'm like, okay, now, have you ever tried to call any government agency? Like, nobody's going to pick up. Like, that's just a silly threat to just make the person, feel small in that moment and feel intimidated. I see a question coming in, so we can take the question. Let me see, is that a question? Let me see the question. Okay. All right, we have a question from Dodie. Dodie, what happens in a situation where the U.S. citizen actually went ahead to file something with the USCIS? What do you mean by something? Because did they file an I-130 petition? Because that, you know, let me know the something, but um, well, essentially for a VAWA-based or abuse-based green card type situation, there's always going to be investigations on everything, right? So that's why we encourage you going to professionals, therapists. If you had police reports, it's because now you have other things to support your claim, so they can just be able to look at the police report or trace whatever, because the officers, they have everything to back up whatever you're saying. So that's the investigation they will do. File something harmful with the USCIS. I'm not sure. I don't think there's anything to file, right? So essentially, anything that was threatened to be filed, I really don't know how it will be filed. Calling a number or filing something, right? You actually have to go through a whole process. So in the course of abuse, if they showed you a letter, which is a tactic I've heard of before, like basically this is letter I wrote to USCIS, I'm going to send it. But I'm just like, if you're going to send it, why don't you just send it? Like, if you're showing me that you're going to file something with USCIS, that's part of the abuse. That's the manipulation, right? So, but anyway, let's go on to the next one. The next type of abuse. All right. Yes, my favorite one, gaslighting or psychological manipulation. Um, that goes in line with everything I've been talking about. Trying to show someone some evidence of something and react in a certain way is still trying to control behavior, right? You should have your own freedom to do whatever it is that you need. Okay? Take that question and let me see something. 1 second. Okay. Need to do that again. Yes, so gaslighting or psychological manipulation is actually one of the worst ones because the person might even tell you, babe, like this person does not actually ever, you know, argue with you or really do anything. They provide, they're real chill, they really make you feel like, it's a partnership and they will support you. They're the ones that told you to stay, right? Um, but then 5 years go by and they don't file anything. You get me? So that's another way that abuse can happen. It's not always so obvious to where, or the person just being straight up, mean and all those things that I said. But essentially, they just keep telling you they're going to do something and then just never do it. And that's how you end up. I've seen 20-year gaslighting situations, right? Um, so if that's you, that's happening, you have the option to definitely leave that situation and know that you're not going to lose your green card. You already filed. My information is on the screen. You can reach out. Let's talk about it because there's definitely options. Okay, you can start in order to get some proof for all these types of abuse, because these types of abuse, they're non-physical, right? Because there's no punching involved, so there are no marks to show. You probably didn't call the police the day your spouse was like, oh, I'm going to file for you, and then they didn't for 5 years, right? Because you just kept believing them. But every time you come up with the money, they'll find a way to spend the money. They'll find a way to delay the process, or they don't have their taxes, and they're like, oh, this is going to take forever. Next thing you know, the year really goes by quickly. We're already at the end of October right now. Like, things go by quickly, and you just wait for 5 years. And in your mind, you're just really confused because they say they want to do it, but then why has it not happened? And then you justify it with whatever. You didn't call the police that time. So um, basically, that's the type of evidence you should start gathering, making your journals, talking to your friends about the situation, asking questions yourself. There are free consultations all over the internet. Call somebody, book one with me and ask questions, right? Find out for yourself, do research, okay? So gather up these things and then begin to see the pattern, right? See how often it happens, and know that you are in an abusive marriage, and that's it, right? So gather your evidence. I mean, your pictures and all of that is great, but writing your statements is gonna. If you have a journal that has been keeping track of everything that's been going on, that's going to help you tremendously with the timeline. Okay, because USCIS wants to see when you met, how the relationship was building till now, and everything, and you need to be able to show that. So gather that stuff now, because you're going to forget. Sometimes with gaslighting and this abusive dynamics, there's a lot of love bombing as well. So if there's 12 months in a year, and every 2 months, so every quarter, out of that quarter, 2 months, they're gaslighting the heck out of you. Then 1 month, they're just love bombing you with gifts and things like that. So you're just confused about what you need to be doing. So that's, you need to see that pattern and see that this is not normal. I should be further ahead. If this person is not helping me get further ahead and they're not even divorcing you, then that's oppressive, right? That's oppressive. That's what you need to try to get away from. All right. So what's next? Isolation. Oh, this one, my goodness. This one is so subtle that you definitely didn't call the police for isolation because you didn't even realize it was happening. Okay. Meaning that they leave you at home with no money, no access to leaving, and then, maybe barely any food at home. And just, you can't go anywhere. You can't really, who are you going to call or talk to, because you haven't been talking to your family like that for a while, because he or she needed your full undivided attention for forever, right? And so now you don't really have anyone else to talk to or ask, and then they left you at home, uh, sometimes for days or however long, and you feel alone. Feel alone. You can't even share the problems with people because the people, they don't really know what's going on, because nothing is going on, right? Nothing is going on because the person is not hitting you. It's usually when there's physical abuse that people start to acknowledge abuse. So you never really say anything, but you just know that, we're going to file this green card one day, and I'm going to have this freedom one day, and they're just assuming that you're going to survive and get through it, and still have your life. And hopefully, if you have your life, you're not old and battered by that time, because your body keeps count. Your body is going to show that abuse. You can be smiling and deceiving everybody as much as you want, but it's going to show, right? So let's not play these games anymore and get these green cards. If you need it, through VAWA, need it. If you're just listening to me and you're not a non-citizen, then just leave. You can book a call to discuss it. I'm not a therapist, so I can't really give you that kind of guidance, but I can definitely tell you what your immigration options are. Okay. All right. So what's the next one we can talk about today? Oh, one. Wow. This one is very sensitive because yes, a lot of people do not realize or do not even consider that sexual abuse could occur in a marital setting, right? Because I mean, it's your husband, right? That you're entitled or he's entitled to your body because he has not your husband. And under religious, sometimes religious settings, they have all these requirements of things that you need to do or not do, and it's just a whole situation, right? Only an individual going through that can actually come out and say that this is happening. So you know what goes on behind your family. I mean, like I said, this is not abuse is not something that everybody sees. It's only the people that it's happening to within themselves that know, right? You feel it every day and you know. So you know the times what your spouse has either made requests or done things. They're just different ways that sexual abuse happens in marriage, making you do things you don't want to do, or just or transmitting diseases, just different things. Let's just talk about it more in a private setting. So just give me a call, okay? But just know that it is there. So if you're watching this right now and you hear this, just know that you need to call me now, okay? And let's discuss. All right. Um, what else? Privilege. Yeah, I think I kind of touched on this earlier with intimidation and all of that, where they essentially feel like, it's a privilege for you to be here. I brought you to the USA, so essentially, you need to listen to everything I say, pretty much. So that's essentially one way that the U.S. citizen spouse or permanent resident spouse, whoever is filing your green card, would be cruel for you to prove that for VAWA. Okay, so if you are just basically feeling like anything that they say, because now you can't really argue, because if you bring up an argument, you're going to make them mad, and they're going to bring up this status and this fact that they are helping you and so on and so forth. In the calmest voice, even, like I said, it's not always going to be violent or anything like that. Even though the name says Violence Against Women Act, but I think domestic violence, people focus more on the physical aspects of things. But there's a lot of non-physical manipulation that just goes on in that dynamic. Um, and when it comes to living and thriving in the USA, the non-citizen is always going to have the lesser hand, because either way, you're going to need a lot of things from your citizen spouse. You need their work stuff, and sometimes people don't want to show you their work stuff because they don't want you to know how much they earn, so they don't produce that stuff, and that delays your process, and that's the whole thing. So but if you're noticing any of these things, I'm seeing the next one coming up. But if you're noticing any of these things in your dynamics, please reach out. Let's talk about it, and see if you have enough evidence to show that extreme cruelty. Okay, like I said, start journaling, start taking note of dates and times, and just start knowing how things happen. They're showing up at your work, or spending your money without permission, just overspending or making demands and things that you shouldn't have to do. Definitely could qualify for violence, right? The next one I saw was threat and coercion. Yes, so that's a favorite way as well for abusers to manipulate and control, especially in this setting where they're filing your green card, because making threats to deport you or to divorce you is definitely going to make you behave in a certain way, which I think that's what they're hoping. That's why they keep doing it, right? So that you can either send me money, transfer me money now. I'm just texting you every time, like send me money, now. That's or else, like or else what, right? Or else nothing, right? You need to understand that and find your freedom by just going hard and speaking to someone who can really help you decipher which conversations are normal. Because, like I said, in a marital setting, or any setting with more than one person, because even with yourself, aren't you always arguing with yourself in your mind? Well, maybe it's just me, but there's you always find conflict, right? There's always going to be conflict. We're not all going to do things the same exact way. So, with that being said, you need to be able to tell what's actually just an argument versus like a threat and coercion. I mean, and you already know actually because you already feel that discomfort. If you're actually calling me already and asking questions, like I said, if you're already even making recordings of when people are speaking to you or just trying to take notes of everything, you are in an abusive dynamic because you shouldn't really have to do that in a normal argument with your spouse because that will come up rarely, and you already know there are healthy ways to resolve conflict, right? There are healthy ways to talk about it. So, anyways, what's the next one we could talk about so I can then answer some questions? Or is that the last one? Okay. Well, if that's the last one, let's start answering the questions now because we basically been talking for a while, but we've just had some disconnections along the way. So thank you for sticking with us, for those of you still here. And for those of you watching afterwards, my contact information is on the screen if you need to reach out to talk to a lawyer about filing your green card through marriage or through a VAWA self-petition. We'll be more than happy to guide you and provide you with some answers, support, whatever you need to get you to that freedom. Okay, I'm very serious about this freedom, guys. Very serious, dead serious. So let's get into the questions. All right, from Debbie. Hi, Debbie. Thank you for joining. Let's see. When sending applications for the green card, should you send the medical at the same time? That's an easy one. So it's really up to you. You can send it at the same time, but if you want to wait till your interview, you could uh, get that done at that time. Okay, so just they will always send you like a courtesy notice to get your medical done because they're about to call you for interview so you can have it for your interview. Okay, so it's really up to you, but if you already have a doctor and you already just want to get it done, you can send it in. Sometimes it does expire before they make a decision, then you have to do another one. So that's the main reason why I tell my clients to wait till the end. But really, in 2022, people have been getting approved without interviews. So at this point in time, it may seem like it's a good idea to send in your medical because for some of my clients who have already had their interviews waived, we still have to send in the medical like later. So instead of them just because basically interviews waived, green card is is done. They already approve everything, but they still need that medical, right? So that's essentially my answer on that. So it's really up to you on what you want to do, and following what's going on the trend for 2022. You feel like maybe you've been married for more than 2 years. That's typically where that could happen, or you have outstanding evidence of bona fide relationship. Typically, they will waive that interview process for you. So yeah. So what's the next question? Thank you, Debbie. We have Mauricio. Okay, this is the second Mauricio I've known in the past couple of weeks. Cool. Mauricio, what's your question? You currently have an advanced parole. Okay, so have you traveled outside the USA with your advanced parole? Or what's the question around that? Advanced parole, for those of you that don't know, is your I-131 for you to travel outside the USA while your green card is pending. So instead of waiting for it to be fully approved, you have the opportunity to travel and come back, of course, because you're going to have your interview and other things going on. But at least you'll be able to re-enter, because most people applying for the green card probably overstayed. And so if you travel without a travel permit or your advanced parole, you may have trouble coming in after that. So, but anyway, if there's no question tied to that, let's see what the next question is so we can wrap it up for today. It's been a great topic speaking to you guys about it. This is where we get real on this live and stop playing these games, because I'm not playing with y'all. You do next? Well, what do you mean you have a plan with a guy in Africa? Well, if you're a permanent resident and you are married to a non-citizen, you can definitely still file a family-based petition for your spouse. Okay, it's for U.S. citizens and permanent residents. So if you are a green card holder, like you said, so you're a permanent resident, and you end up getting married to your African boyfriend, that will be what you will do next, to file the family-based petition, right? Permanent residents, unfortunately, cannot file a K-1 fiance visa. You need to be a U.S. citizen for that. So that's why for U.S. citizens who just want to meet, because maybe you've been talking on Facebook or however you met for a long time, and you just person to see if you're going to be able to um, make it work and get married. And after 90 days, just 3 months, you get married, and then you file your marriage-based green card. So that will be, if you are a U.S. citizen, that would have been your next steps. But since you're a permanent resident, it's all about just being married to your longtime boyfriend. Okay, if you haven't, I don't know what the dynamics are as far as like if you were traveling back and forth, seeing each other, if you've known each other for a long time, all that stuff. You just need to have evidence that the relationship is real as usual, and then go from there. Okay. What's the next question? Okay. How long from Stinga 12? Thank you for watching. How long does USCIS take to issue your work permit? Okay, that one is just really dependent. It could be 45 days, it could be 1 year. Okay, it really just varies. And it's sometimes the people, like some of my clients, I filed in the middle of the pandemic, you know, are still waiting for some of their stuff compared to people who just filed like yesterday. They're getting all their stuff like, sooner. So it really just depends on when you file all of that stuff. It can take up to a year, but sometimes it could be way sooner. All right. Hope that answers your question. Stinga, thank you for joining and sharing. I've been seeing a lot of you guys sharing the lives with your friends. Thank you very much. Just make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and TikTok. Just follow me, or Instagram, so you can know when I'm going live, because I will share it on my page, and then you can join us. Okay. All right. Any other questions for us today? Okay. We have one from Ahmad that says B1, B2, married, a permanent resident, I-130 approved. Do I think they will approve the I-485? I mean, I don't know, because I don't really determine how it gets approved, right? Well, what kind of evidence did you provide That's what the USCIS officer will look at to approve your I-485. Okay. So did you have any misrepresentation or your B-1? We'll have to see. Did you? How soon after you arrived in your B1, B2 did you get married to your permanent resident? Did you overstay? We'll have to see. Those are the questions you should be asking, not whether it's. I think they will approve it, because I mean, I may think they will, but what I think doesn't really matter is what you actually submitted that matters. Yeah. So, any other questions? I hope that guides you a little bit to know what you should be looking into. Just reach out to my information on the screen. Let's talk more about it. All right. Any more questions? I think that was it. Well, there's one more. Okay. JJ, I'm not laughing at you per se. I'm just laughing at the question, because I get this question quite a bit. Because if you're not engaged to a U.S. citizen and you just want to come to the U.S. solely for the purpose of getting married, I mean, I really don't know how you're going to start that process, because that's not really how it works. That's like reverse marriage-based green card, right? Well, you're supposed to already have the spouse and everything, and then when you come, you do that. So if your spouse is a U.S. citizen and you're engaged and you want to come to U.S. get married, then you file the fiance visa. That would be an option. But if there's any other thing, there's really no way to go about it. Right? You just have to have the qualified relative, which is your spouse, for this law firm. I mean, there's so many other relatives that qualify, like your parents or your children can even file for you. But that's just family based, right? Not your aunties or uncles or anything like that. But if you have a qualified relative, that person just files the appropriate type of visa for you to come in and do what you need to do as far as like residency, right? So I hope that answers your question. Okay, another question. When a LPR files for a spouse, will the spouse get a work authorization before the green card? Not necessarily. Well, since it's a permanent resident, I don't think that really makes a difference as far as the timeline, because right now the categories are current. So permanent residents essentially, it's the same timeline, right? So you could get your work authorization before your green card, or sometimes you may never get it at all, and just get your green card. That's happened in different situations. So, but to me, if you get your green card in like 7 months and never get a work authorization, I feel like that's a win, right? Because your green card trumps all of that anyway. Your green card is your work authorization and travel permit in one. Yeah. And it has a longer duration, even though these days work authorizations have been going for 2 years still. So, you know. Okay, thanks for your questions, you guys. I think this will be our last question for today. I appreciate you guys for joining and sharing with your friends and everything, and following me. I saw some follows on TikTok. Thank you. So we'll do this again every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, so that we can just talk about some of these issues, answer some questions, and really get everyone on the same page as to what they need to be doing to find their freedom, towards meeting their goals. Okay? All right. Melanin or Melanin Libra on asylum. You got married to a citizen. Should I withdraw the asylum and my husband file a new one? Oh, okay. So are you on asylum or you have a pending asylum? That's important to know. Because basically, if your asylum application is just pending, right? You just let it keep pending, right? Because you really, that's one of your opportunities. Because through asylum, you can still get your green card, right? If you get approved for your asylum and you have your asylum status for a year, you get your green card, okay? Also, be married to a U.S. citizen spouse, so it's a pending asylum. Yeah, did you get your work authorization? Because I know a year or two ago they changed it to like a whole year before it's work authorization. So yeah, if it's pending, I usually just tell clients in that same type of position to just leave it pending because there's really no the asylum application is not a green card application. Now you can't have two green card applications on file. Like for example, you can't have one pending from maybe your parent, and then you got married, and now you're filing through your spouse. It's the same family base, so you have to just choose a family member that you want. Okay, it's the same form and everything, but asylum is a completely different thing. Okay, so just hold on to that because this whole live today was about VAWA and the different ways that a spouse could be cruel towards a non-citizen, right? And you never really know what the situation is with your spouse until you file and get your approval, and then you can then drop your asylum thing, right? So for right now, it's not really affecting anything. That's just basically it's not really going to hurt anything for you to file your marriage-based green card. So if you want to file your marriage-based green card, go ahead and do that. And just if you need help, I'll be here. All right. So I think we are all talked out for the day. We're going to go ahead and end today's live. Thank you again for joining. Don't forget who I am. I'm Ivy. Say it with me. The marriage green card lawyer. Follow me for green card application tips. I help couples file their marriage-based green card so that they can find freedom in the USA and really get to be their full selves. Okay? All right. Ciao. Have a great Friday, you guys. Bye-bye.